Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I never checked my bank account on Sundays. It was a quiet ritual of trust. I worked hard, lived modestly, and never spent recklessly. But something about that morning, a silence after the family reunion the night before, the way my phone vibrated twice then stopped, I had a feeling. I opened my banking app, casually, still nursing a half-empty cup of coffee, then froze. $345. My breath hitched. I blinked, refreshed the screen. No mistake. No glitch. My balance had plummeted from over $14,797 to just enough for a few bags of groceries. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the recent transactions, one after another, marked as transfers. Not purchases, not bills. Transfers, all of them sent to a linked account. Not mine. For a full minute, I couldn't move. I just stared at the number. I felt like someone had reached inside me and yanked out the floor beneath my life. Then I called the bank. "Yes, Miss Reeves," the woman on the line said politely after running her audit. "The IP used for access was previously associated with, looks like a residence in Willow Creek, my mother's house, where we just had dinner, where Frank and Rachel had paraded their toddler around like a trophy and moaned about daycare costs, where my mother handed out Tupperware leftovers with one hand and asked if I could float the power bill with the other. I don't live there," I managed to say, each word tasting like metal. "I haven't in over a decade." "Understood. In that case, we can flag this as unauthorized access and..." But I'd stopped listening. My head was buzzing too loud. I already knew. Frank, Rachel, they always needed help. They always needed me. "I'll pay you back. We're family, Molly. You're doing so well." Just a little until payday. A bitter laugh crawled up my throat. I had spent years helping them, covering overdrafts, co-signing loans, replacing emergency tires, even paying for my mother's dentist when her insurance lapsed. I was the responsible one. The helper. The invisible lifeline they all leaned on. I pressed call. Frank answered on the second ring. "Hey, Molly, what's up?" "You took it." My voice cracked with disbelief more than anger. "All of it. Over 14,000. Are you serious?" I paused. A small scoff. Then Rachel in the background. "She found out, huh?" Frank sighed. "We needed it more than you did, okay. Rachel's hours got cut, the baby's been sick, and you just keep stacking it away like you don't know what struggle is." "Frank," I said slowly, "that was my life savings." "Come on," he muttered. "You've got no kids, no mortgage, no one depending on you." That stung, more than I expected. Then Rachel's voice rang clear in the background, unbothered and loud. "She's lucky she can even help. That's what family's for." I hung up. My hands were ice. My thoughts a wildfire. They didn't ask. They didn't warn me. They just took, as if my hard work, my stability, my savings didn't belong to me anymore. And the worst part? They felt entitled to it. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, the room lit only by the blue glare of my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know what I was searching for, relief, maybe, or proof that I wasn't crazy. Instead, I opened an old folder labeled Receipts. There they were, years of silent transactions. $520 for Frank's urgent transmission repair. $1,000 wired to Rachel during her job search. $680 to cover mom's winter heating bill, twice. Each line reminded me of how quickly they asked, and how quickly I said yes. No one ever asked how I was doing. No one even hesitated. I remembered the Christmas when I skipped a ski trip with friends to buy my parents a new washer. The time I paid the down payment on Frank's minivan and he didn't even say thank you, just texted. Funds came through. "You're the best." I clenched my jaw. The next morning, I stopped by my mother's. She was at the table, humming, slicing fruit into a glass bowl. The smell of vanilla and denial hung thick in the air. "Did you know?" I asked softly. She looked up, then down again. "Know what?" "That Frank and Rachel drained my account, from here." A pause. Then, calmly, "They needed help." I blinked. "So you knew." She shrugged, as if I pointed out the weather. "You always help. You've always been the stable one." "Stable isn't the same as disposable," I said, heat rising. "You let them steal from me." My mother scoffed. Don't be dramatic, Molly. It's not stealing. It's sharing. We're family. I stared at her. The woman who once grounded me for borrowing $10 from her purse. Now she defended felony theft with fruit salad and a tired proverb. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. They didn't see it as theft. They saw it as expected. And it had happened before. Only this time, they hadn't even bothered to ask. The park was nearly empty, except for a man jogging with a golden retriever and an old woman feeding pigeons. I sat on the far bench beneath a withered maple, my bank app still open on my phone. The numbers hadn't changed. $45.52. The wind picked up, scattering dry leaves at my feet like confetti at a funeral. My funeral. The funeral of my patience, my blind loyalty. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote the first entry. June 4, 2018. Rachel's root canal, $1,260. No insurance. The ink bled slightly. My hands were shaking. "Excuse me," came a voice. A stranger, mid-30s, kind eyes, gestured to the opposite side of the bench. "Mind if I sit?" I nodded. He sat quietly, sipping from a paper cup. For a few minutes, we just existed in silence. "You look like someone who just got stabbed in the back," he said gently. I laughed bitterly. "Close. Turns out I've been used for years. They only call when they need something." He tilted his head. "Family?" I nodded. He sipped again. "That's the worst kind. They know exactly where to cut." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because he was right. Later, I drew a single line beneath my last journal entry. Then I wrote in all caps, "I am not a Siridiai card with a HARTB8. It wasn't for them. It was for me, my first boundary in ink. And I meant every word of it. Sunday dinner had always been sacred in our family, pot roasts, potatoes, and passive aggression. I arrived with a folder in my tote bag and a steel rod of resolve down my spine. Frank passed the mashed potatoes like nothing had happened. Rachel complimented the gravy she didn't make. My mother chatted about a church bake sale. I waited until the plates were full, the wine was poured. Then I set the folder on the table with a soft but deliberate thud. "I got a transaction report from the bank," I said. "They traced the login to this address, to your Wi-Fi. Turns out you've been making constant withdrawals from my account for 2 years." Forks froze midair. Frank was the first to recover. "Molly, come on. We're family. Don't make this a thing." Rachel didn't even blink. "You have a good job. We thought you wouldn't miss it." "You thought?" I snapped. "You took without asking. That's not family. That's theft." My mother sighed, as if I just overreacted to spilled milk. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. They needed help. And I needed respect," I said quietly, "but none of you thought to offer that." The silence was heavier than the roast. No one spoke as I gathered my papers and stood. "Next time," I said, "don't call it sharing when what you really mean is stealing." And I left. For once, I didn't look back. I stood at the head of the same dining table where they'd once laughed off my pain. This time, I wasn't trembling. I was prepared. "This," I said, holding up the document, "is a police report." Rachel's glass halted mid-sip. Frank's face drained of color. My mother dropped her knitting needles into her lap. "I filed it 2 days ago. Identity theft. Unauthorized access to a financial account. The bank's cyber forensics traced the login here. To your devices." Frank scoffed, his voice tight. "You wouldn't do that to us." "I already did," I replied. As if rehearsed, the door creaked open. 2 officers stepped in. The silence chattered. "Frank Reeves? Rachel Reeves?" one asked. "You're under arrest for felony identity theft." Rachel sprang up. "You've got to be kidding. We're your family." "Exactly," I said. "And you still stole from me." My mother stood, voice trembling. "Molly, this isn't who we are." "No," I said, locking eyes with her. "This is exactly who you are." I just finally stopped pretending. As the officers cuffed them, Frank cursed, calling me heartless. But I felt nothing but clarity. I walked out with my head high, the door shutting behind me like the final punctuation of a long, bitter sentence. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a daughter. I felt like someone free. The silence in my apartment that night wasn't empty, it was earned. No phone calls, no apologies, just the low hum of my fridge and the ticking of a clock that finally belonged to me. I scrolled through my inbox, 7 messages from my mother, all unread. One subject line read, "Please, we're still your family." I deleted it. The next day, I walked into the bank. The manager, Mr. Feldman, greeted me with a nervous smile. "Miss Reeves, I just wanted to say, what you did, most people wouldn't have the courage." I gave a tight smile. It wasn't courage, it was survival. Back home, I opened the small fireproof box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old birthday cards I'd kept, most empty, some signed with rushed scribbles. None from Frank or Rachel. Not one. That night, I met my friend Lillian for coffee. She leaned across the table. "Do you feel better? Now that it's over?" I stirred my cup slowly. It's not over. It never will be. But at least I know now, I was never crazy, just convenient. Lillian reached for my hand. "You lost them." I nodded. But I found myself. And as we left the cafe, my phone buzzed once more. Mom calling. I silently shut it off and walked forward.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.